So hello. As you guys know, so my name is Cody Bahlau. I work on the Columbia University research vessel, the Marcus G. Langseth, and this is a talk with the Explorers Club student chapter at Columbia University. Um, Evelyn, do you kind of want to introduce the club or?
Absolutely. So we're the first collegiate chapter actually of the Explorers Club, and so there are 40 board members, and as we mentioned, there are like 95 people who could potentially be joining today. So basically, the club, it's largely just kind of like introducing students to like exploration, introducing them more to like the Explorers Club if they'd be interested in eventually like becoming like a student member, but basically just like a lot of that and interest in like the many different things that the Explorers Club is interested in, whether it's like natural sciences, culture, history, just any number of things. We're like a very well-rounded club, and we have a very interesting niche. So that's us. And one quick thing before I forget, here's the birdie I told you about. Not the one for the club. We still got to make that, but that's for the sailing club.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the expedition flag will be fun. Hopefully you guys can get it made and send it out, and we'll fly it on board. Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the chat. So I'm thinking today we'll look at sort of the Marcus G. Langseth, what we do. We'll look at the greater UNOLS, or the university fleet that exists out there that I didn't even know existed up until I came here. We'll talk a little bit about the science we do on board, and then life on board modern research vessel. So as we start, let's look where we're at here. Let me share my screen. So right now we're transiting from, so we started in San Diego, and we're transiting from San Diego to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to the Marshall Islands. So I'm using Google Earth. Let me throw that up. So we all know Google Earth. So we started in San Diego. This yellow line is our transit line. We did a stopover in Hawaii to change out some crew, to pick up some fruits and vegetables. And now we're continuing on. So this is us right now, the Marcus G. Langseth. That's where we're at. We're just passing by the Johnson Atoll. This is the international date line. So we're going to cross that here quite soon. And then we'll be to the Marshall Islands. And what we're going to be doing in the Marshall Islands, we're going to be picking up our scientists. So every expedition that we have on board the boat here, we have new scientists, new students, new researchers that come on every time. So right now it's a very minimal crew. So it's only the Marine crew, myself, so I'm a technician, and one other technician to make sure that the systems are going well as we transit. But when we pick the scientist up there, we'll have, it's 52, 53 people on board the boat. So 20 plus scientists will then sail. And this is a cruise or an expedition for NOAA. And we're going to go from the Marshall Islands along the 9.5 degree line of latitude all the way to essentially Panama City, where the canal is. So it's 55 days at sea, and it's an oceanographic type expedition. So they're going to be taking water samples. They're going to be, so we have an instrument that we lower down to the water column. It's called a CTD, and it's going to be taking the temperature, the salinity, oxygen. They're looking at turbidity, so how much sediment is in the ocean or in the water. Looking at the light penetration. So there's multiple different instruments they can install on that package as it goes down to take different type of oceanographic measurements. We're also deploying some floats. So right now on this transit, we're deploying SOFAR, so SOFAR floats, SOFAR floats, and these are just little floats that drift in the ocean, and they report back surface type data. So the height of the ocean, the currents, where it's being drifted through GPS communication. So quite a bit going on for this cruise, and so that's where we're at right now. So I've mentioned the boat a couple times. Let's watch some drone footage of the vessel. Hold on one second. Here it is. So as I mentioned, the Marcus G. Langseth. So we're just over 70 yards long, so almost a football field long, by 20 yards wide. We have several decks. We have all these strange names offshore, whoever's been on a boat. So we're coming up on the back of the boat right now, which of course is the stern. Now we're flying on the sort of the right side or the starboard side of the vessel. So right in the center there, you can see that big square. That's our A-frame. We'll look at that a little bit later, sort of how we deploy some of the scientific equipment offshore. That big tower in the center is called the PSO tower. So we have biologists who go up there who monitor for wildlife. We're coming up on the front of the boat now, which is the bow. So right below that big sort of blue thick line in the center, that's where the captain is up there with the bridge crew. So we have the captain, we have the chief mate, the second and third mate on board right now. That's our bridge crew. We're coming up to the port side. So we have two small little boats that we can launch in the water to help with scientific missions. The big sort of on the stern, sort of the big silver wing, that's called a paravane. And that helps us with when we deploy our seismic equipment into the water, that helps us keep our separation. And I have a little, well, let's look at it right now, a little diagram. So this diagram is of the scientific equipment in the water, or the seismic gear in the water. So it's a little cartoon. You can see sort of on the outside, there's this black sort of angled little dots, if you can see on the screen. So those are those vanes in the water, and they're essentially vertical airplane wings. And when they go in the water, they help pull the gear wide, so we can have 4 cables or 4 streamers in the water behind the vessel. And each streamer is separated by 150 yards. So, well, 150 meters. So 150 meters between streamers. And those paravanes enable us to be able to get that separation. And we tow that behind us as we then sail down these seismic lines. And we just had a seismic expedition. It was a month and a half ago in the Pacific off of Guatemala, a few hundred miles off of Guatemala. It was the first time in history that any academic boat has done a 4D seismic survey. So what does that mean? So that means that in 2008, this vessel went there and we did a study with the streamers behind the boat. And then just here a month and a half ago, we went back and did that exact same study again. And so that time component 4D. So we're looking at that ridge, and that's the first time in history it's ever been done in an academic setting. The oil and gas world has done it sort of for their reservoirs, but for us, it was a first. It was pretty cool. So let's look a little bit more about the boat, and then I'll talk for a little bit, then we'll stop for questions. I always find that's sort of the best. That's the best way to do it. I got a few more people to add here. So right now it's 20-ish people on board. We'll have up to 52, 53 people here soon. So what does the cabins look like? So the cabins, of course, there's where we nap. So we have multiple cabins on board. Some are single person cabins. This cabin has up to 3 beds here. So you can imagine, there's a little bit of time sharing. So, as you come in at certain times, you have to be a little bit quiet. The boat runs 24/7. So there's always somebody on watch at all times on board the research vessel, whether that's the marine crew or whether that's scientists. So there's always something going on. And let's look at the mess room here. We had one person on YouTube, but I see they're gone now. So we have the mess room here, a very small mess room. But as you can imagine, when we're working on shifts, not everybody eats all at the same time. So we have 3 hot meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then for those who are working sort of that overnight shift or that midnight shift, we have leftovers, we have ramen noodles, etc. They can ask the cooks to save us a plate, so then they can at night they can then have a hot meal. So this is the galley here. So we're just about ready to fill up with the number of people calling in, but we'll keep going. So this is the galley. So it's quite small. So the galley is essentially the kitchen, the cooks. So we have a cook and a steward. They're the ones who prepare our food. So it's quite simple, cafeteria type food. You have the scoops, you have the tongs. We have a big salad bar. So for the sort of healthy options, we always make sure that we have a vegetarian option on board. Before the scientists come, it's part of sort of our job to reach out to find out if there's any dietary restrictions that we need to know about. Are there going to be vegans or vegetarians, and how many? That way the cooks can make sure that they order the appropriate food for the people coming on board. So now we talk about the galley and the mess room. We have to talk about the other side of that coin, which of course is the gym. So we have a little gym on board so people can exercise and get rid of that ice cream that they have on board. It's very small. It's very industrial, but there's a bike, a treadmill, some weights, a little elliptical, etc. So it usually gets quite busy on board. We're gone for 40 to 50 days at a time offshore, quite far from really anything. So we have to be quite self-sufficient. And part of that is having our own little hospital on board. So we have a small hospital, and the captain is the primary medical provider on board. So we have a option called telemedicine. So let's say I go up, Captain, I'm not feeling well. He has a look at me. Okay, let's talk to the doctor. So we have this capability called telemedicine where we can call to George Washington. We can talk directly to a doctor. They can hook some instrumentation up to me, and the doctor can in real time see some vital statistics as they come through: blood pressure, heartbeat, etc. They can listen to sort of your heart rate, and then through this, the doctor, along with the captain, can help diagnose potentially what's going on. They can provide some medicine if needed to sort of minimize or mitigate any type of incidents we may have. Yep. So a small little hospital. What else do we have? We have the laundry room, of course. So it's shared services. We have the bridge. So this is where the captain, chief mate, second mate, third mate are up there on the bridge. So one thing you don't see, of course, is the big wheel. It's almost like a PlayStation game now. You drive by a little joystick, and that's how they drive the boat. Of course, the bridge is manned 24 hours a day. Any type of emergency that we would have on board, that's where we call. So instead of calling 911, we call 999. That calls the bridge. For example, if we see a fire on board, 999 is the number we call. And then if we feel safe, we can try to fight the fire. But at that time, they've got the alarm going. People are going to the muster station, and the fire team is going to come down with their full suits, the BA, and fight the fire properly. So yeah, a couple more pictures of the boat. I think we'll stop for some questions. We have a small movie room on board, so for people to sort of unwind after shift. We have Netflix, we have Amazon Prime, we have Starlink on board, so the internet's quite good. And then, so when we start a journey, when we start an expedition, we always have a drill, just like an office environment or a school environment. So the captain, the chief mate, so we'll be up there doing a little bit of training. So this particular drill is a man overboard, it's abandoned ship drill. So we have two types of abandoned ship drill. We have the life jackets if the water is warmer, and we have the Gumby suits or the immersion suits, big red, thick neoprene suits that we would get into if we have to go into the water in a cold type environment. So both of these things are things that the scientists will try on as they come to make sure that, number one, they're sort of aware of what to do, and also how to put the suit and jacket on properly. Yeah. Okay, let's stop there for some questions. What do you guys have?
I wanted to ask, what's the capacity of the boat? Like, how many people can go in?
So the capacity is limited by the number of beds, actually. So according to the rules of the Coast Guard, so we're limited to a number of people based on those beds. So 53, 54 is just about max for us. We have a few more beds, but some people with their ratings, they're in their cabin by themselves, and that bed isn't used or that bunk isn't used. So 53 is just about max for us. Yeah. Sorry, who was that? Who asked that question?
Catherine.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. Yeah.
Sorry, we haven't met before. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
What are some international water laws do you feel like are kind of go under the scope in terms of just your general awareness?
Yeah, fantastic question. So when we transit, like right now, so we have the multi-beam going, so the EM-122 multi-beam. We have the Newton Chirp, which is a sub-bottom profiler, and we have an ADCP as well, which is a current profiler. So when we're transiting international waters, we can acquire data as much as we want international waters. Once we go into a country's EEZ, their exclusive economic zone, so within 200 miles of that country, we either have to have permission to be able to acquire data, or we'll have to shut things off. So part of the planning that we do when we're doing transits is we look at the sort of the EEZs. We look at the sort of, well, there's a couple things. We look at the vessel track to see if we're going to be in those EEZs. And we also look at the underlying sonar data that's already been acquired. So we look at JEPCO, which is a product out of Columbia University. We look at that to see what that data looks like. So, oceans are 70-ish% of the world. Only 26-27% of the actual ocean basins have been mapped. Most of that is along the continental shelf, the United States, etc., Europe. A vast amount of the world hasn't been mapped. I got a picture actually. Yeah. So you can see here. So the black areas are the areas that have not been mapped. In the lighter blue, sort of greenish colors are the areas that have been mapped. So you can see, next to the continental shelf, Hawaii, of course, over by Asia, there's huge areas that have been mapped, but there's massive areas that, of course, haven't. So part of sort of our mission is, even when we're transiting like that, we want to map new data. So we'll tweak our vessel track. We won't sail on the same vessel track over and over. We'll offset it to be able to make sure that we get new data. And another part is, so we have a layer that it's just a simple layer that we put on Google Earth. Hold on. Share here. Yeah, so this is just a simple layer that we throw on Google Earth. Obviously, we don't navigate by it, but it's just a approximation of where the EEZs are that allow us, the technicians, to sort of plan our route. And then once we plan it, we send it to the captain of the bridge for them to do the final tweaking to make sure that what we would like to do is realistic with regards to, of course, water depth, any type of buoys or obstructions in the water, etc. They, of course, have the final say, but we use this as a general guideline to be able to plan based on the EEZs and also the underlying coverage. So when we go to Panama City towards the end of this month, or in 50 days, so we just have to be aware. So as we come into closer to shore, where those EEZs are and what countries we do and don't have permission to sail into. Yeah, or not sail, but to acquire data into. Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I guess some of us are curious on how you chose this as a career in the first place. Like, what inspired you, and what keeps you on the boat? Essentially, is like what motivates you to stay on a research vessel?
Yeah, so my degree. So I went to University of Michigan, go Blue. My degree is in geology. It's a long time ago. I went to the oil and gas world. So right out of college, was hired. I went overseas. I lived there for 4 or 5 years in Scotland and Kazakhstan. I was working on the rigs then for a company called Schlumberger. I then switched divisions. So from working on the rigs to working on their seismic boats. And I did that up until 2020, essentially. Well, at least in the oil and gas world. And then from there, I decided that I wanted to come to Columbia. So I came to the research boat here. And I've been here ever since 2020. So this is quite different. I enjoy it because we get to see all the students and researchers come on board every time. So you get that excitement that sort of you miss just from like the industrial type job in the oil and gas world. You get to see the full evolution of the expedition here, where it's such a small team. You get to be involved with sort of the early planning. The mobilization, the acquisition, the demobilization, and then sort of the end of job type paperwork. So I've been working, there's a job coming up on the East Coast. So we've been doing a little bit of work on this for a couple of years now. So the lead PI, his name is Brandon Shuck, very nice guy. So we thought it was canceled for a little bit, but he was able to get funding from the NSF. And this summer, we're going to be coming to the East Coast and doing this seismic work here. So, with this type of job on board here, you're sort of involved with that from the early stages in working through. So this is going to be a fun job. So we're going to come out of Savannah. We're going to go deploy OBSs, so ocean bottom seismometers. I'll show you a little video of what those look like. Those essentially sit on the bottom of the ocean, and they can either passively record any type of earthquakes or plate shifts, or we can have an active source over top of them, meaning we deploy air guns and we make a noise. It then records that. So how seismic works essentially is similar to like how a bat flies. So bat flies, makes a noise. The noise goes out, reflects back. The bat then listens, and then it can make an image of sort of the surrounding. So we do quite similar with the rocks, almost like how an ultrasound is used in the hospital. So we have a long cable that gets towed behind the boat. It's 15 kilometers long, so it's very long. And then we put air, a seismic source, compressed air, into the water behind us. It's a couple hundred meters back. We then sail down these seismic lines. The seismic source goes off, that air goes into the water, sound goes down, reflects off the different layers. We then record it on our cable, and then we can make an image of the rock. So let's look at an image. So this picture was from up by Alaska, up here. So this is so here you can see. So this is a convergent plate. On the left is the Juan de Fuca. On the right is North American plate. So you have the Juan de Fuca plate, which is coming in its subsiding or in its subduction zone below the North American plate. So you can see sort of the sediment layers. So if you imagine a cake, so instead of looking at the cake top down, we've cut the cake and we're looking at it from the side, so we can see sort of the frosting layers, we can see the sprinkles, etc. And so this is one of the things that we can do with seismic. So we can image many, many kilometers down into the rock. So scientists are able to look at plate boundaries. They're able to look at any type of volcanoes down there, etc. And it's quite useful, obviously, for the better understanding of the plate tectonics, etc. So yeah. So the OBSs, so they're about the size of a coffee table, and we deploy them from the A-frame that I had mentioned earlier. So here's just a picture of one, and I'll show a little video here in a second. Oops, sorry. So here's a picture. So this instrument is out of Scripps from San Diego. So there's two main places, Scripps and Hui, in the US anyways, that provide the OBSs. So let's look at a little video. Here we go. So I have two. I have one that shows the deployment, and then one for the water column.
You have been the one for me. Goodbye, my lover. Goodbye, my friend. You have been the one. You have been the one for me.
And then this is down to the water column. So a little neat fact. So we drop them down, and then to recover them, so we have an acoustic transponder on board the boat, 12 kilohertz. We can go over top of them. We talk to them. They burn a wire, and they float to surface. They rise at 40-ish meters a minute, but due to the water depth, it could take an hour and a half to 2 hours just to get all the way to the surface. They go down quite deep. So yeah. Let's do one more video because it's fun, and then let's do a couple more questions. So right now the weather is quite calm. Sometimes it's not. This is what it can be.
All hands hoist the colors high. Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.
Yeah, I just added Mara. It looks like. Yeah. So I have more videos. I have more pictures. Do we have any questions right now?
Yes, I did actually. Hi. I was wondering, because this looks dangerous from the last video, what kind of safety drills do you guys go through? Like you mentioned the one where like you evacuate the boat, but is there anything else that you do to like prepare?
Yeah. So we have many type of drills on board, specifically within like the maritime and vessel capabilities. So we have fire, we have abandoned ship, we have man overboard or person overboard. So in that type of situation, so they would ring the alarm. There's different alarms for different drills. So the main thing that we do is muster. So I'll take the names of the scientists and techs. I'll listen for what the captain asks, and if the captain asks us to go to the outside of the boats to monitor or to look for a person, that would be the case. We'd go up on that tower where the biologists are. We look. We also have a couple different security drills. So we have essentially a pirate drill. So we would all come down here to the main lab where I'm at now. This is sort of like the citadel, and we would lock the doors behind us. And the idea behind that is we want to make it difficult for them to sort of take a hostage. So we would lock the doors as we go, and we sort of increase that barrier, increase the time it would take them to get to us. So the idea by that time we've already called, and hopefully someone's going to come, and rescue us. We also have a stowaway drill where the teams break into sort of small groups, and we would look for a stowaway. We all have sort of a zone that we would search and things like that. Yeah. Specifically for like our job, like deploying the gear into the water. So we have procedures that sort of govern how we work in what type of weather that we would work in. So we just don't go out in sort of rough seas and try to put something in the water. So the risk management style is sort of prevention and mitigation. So how can we prevent an accident from happening? Whether that's behavioral controls, whether that's for example, mechanical control. Can we put a cover over a button or something like that? And the second would be mitigation. So if something does happen, how do we mitigate it from getting worse? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Hi, Cody. Oh, Evelyn, do you have a question? Sorry, I know you keep on mute.
Nope, you're good.
I was wondering about the larger implications of your guys' research. I know you guys are doing seismic mapping, and kind of wanted to see how this will fit into, exploration in general, as well as like overall knowledge of the Earth.
Yeah. So I mean, it's the overall better understanding of sort of how the Earth works. Just like I think probably like any scientific discipline, there's not really a golden ticket. We're really not gonna have a huge oh my golly moment out here. It's just that little incremental knowledge advancement that sort of helps us better understand sort of how the plates work together. We were working up on the west coast of the U.S., Oregon, and in Washington. There's a real concern sort of for an earthquake zone there in Cascadia. Trying to better understand what that looks like, better understand slope stability. So if there is an earthquake underwater, what does that look like? Is it a potential for tsunami forming? Things like that. So you have sort of the scientific knowledge, but then you also have more of the practical sort of hazards, national disaster type information that can come into play as well. So one example that is being done with the same type of technology that we're using, seismic. So on the west coast of the U.S. and in the Pacific region in general, they have geophones, geophones, which are seismometers they put along the coast. And when an earthquake goes off, these help us understand the risk for a tsunami. So we're able to pinpoint sort of where that earthquake was the origin, and then is there a risk for a tsunami? So then we have the alerts that go out to the Pacific coastlines. Hey, this happened, so be alert. Yeah. So actually, there's a potential seismic job in 2027 up in Alaska, which is in 1964, where a large earthquake went off. So it's sort of a restudy of that region. Yeah. And so that's the geophysics. For the oceanographic world, So we're looking at currents, looking at sea temperatures, trying to understand how that's changing over time. Are the currents getting stronger? Are they getting weaker? Are they getting warmer? How is that going to affect sort of the hurricane season? Is the water staying warmer longer? Is that going to expand the hurricane season? So that sort of work goes into sort of understanding that as well. Did that answer your question, Trent?
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's look at a couple more videos. So we have. So I mentioned that tower a couple times. So when we do our seismic studies, our seismic exploration, we do release the air into the water. And when we do that, we want to make sure, of course, that we don't harm any wildlife that's going to be around us, right? So we want to do our science, but we don't want to harm anything when we're doing it. So we have a dedicated team of biologists who come on board. They're called PSOs, Protected Species Observers, and they work 24 hours a day. They're up in the tower during the daylight doing visual observations. And when it's during the day, they're sitting over here. So all the screens are off now, but they're sitting here, and they have a system called PAM, which is Passive Acoustic Monitoring. We tow a small cable behind us with some hydrophones, and they're able to listen for the vocalization of whales and dolphins. And if it comes too close to the vessel, then we actually, both with PAM or the visual, then we shut down our seismic source. So we stop, emitting that air into the water until that whale, dolphin, turtle, bird, etc., is then out of that exclusion zone, and then we can continue our work again. So here's, so we'll look at the seismic source first. That's kind of cool. So this is an underwater shot. Here we go. Maybe. Yeah, so that's the seismic source in the water, and that's 4 different subarrays, we call them. So it's 6,600 cubic inches of air at 2,000 psi, so it's quite a loud boom. And that's when it's out in the water and it looks nice and it's hanging and everything looks proper. This is how it's actually deployed. So this sort of comes back to your question about risk awareness on board. So you can see that this could go wrong quite quickly if we weren't sort of aware of the hazards and then had preventative measures in place. Let's look at this. So that was a nice smooth deployment. That gun array went off the back, but now imagine with waves surging up the stern where you're knee deep in water that floats bobbing up and down, then that's a whole different story of what that looks like. Yeah. So that's what else we have. Let's look at a streamer being recovered. So that's the streamer. That's what I mentioned was 15 kilometers long. So so when we deploy it the first time, it takes anywhere from 24 to 36 hours to deploy everything into the water. To recover is 16-ish hours. Now, if we have to pick it up and deploy it, a couple times, hopefully we don't, but if we do, then it gets a little bit more efficient. So the new science team on board, they're sort of more aware of what they need to do. The gear has already been configured correctly, so it's able to come on and off quite quickly. So one of the things that we watch for, of course, is weather. Especially depends on where we're working. So with a 15-kilometer streamer, a few things that we have to be aware of is the tension. That's number one. So we have sort of a tension window that we have to work in. So what increases that tension? Well, vessel speed is going to increase the tension. So we have to keep the vessel between 3 knots and 5 knots is sort of our towing window. Max speed is 10. So like on transit right now, we're going 10, but between 3 and 5. We have to be aware of the weather. So once we start sort of going into bad weather and it's tugging that streamer, that tension spikes, and we have to keep those spikes still below that that weather window. Another thing that we have to be aware of are barnacle growth. So in warmer waters, so we just saw it here off of Mexico on this last seismic job we're on. The barnacles grow or can grow very, very fast. And it doesn't take much growth to increase that tension where we can no longer maintain our speed and still keep that tension below that threshold. So that's one of the things that we have to watch out for. So when we were working in Iceland a year and a half ago, so we'd have a sort of a storm system come through every 5-6 days. So we would look at the weather. We would look at the NOAA weather reports. We would look at a service called Buoy Weather. We would look at windy.com and sort of have all this weather data that we would aggregate together to try to decide, what does it look like? Is the seas going to be too rough for us to acquire data? Do we need to recover, get it on board safely, ride out the weather, and then try to put it back out and acquire data? So those are some of the decisions that we would need to make real time with the PIs on board, with the captain, and with myself. Yeah. Should we open it up to some questions?
Cody, I'm a sucker for a good story, and I'm wondering if you had any experiences that kind of really stood out to you during your career.
Usually the best stories are the port call stories. The end of so when everybody comes on board, especially the science team, they're new. They don't even know each other yet, and so they're a little bit nervous, and nobody's really opened up yet. But by the end of a sort of 3, 4, 5 week sort of seismic expedition or any type of expedition, usually when things have gone wrong, the team comes together. So team building, that shared experience, team building event is quite good. So by the end of the trip, you have some good stories. People are really quite friendly, and it's memories for a lifetime. So we've had some fun times up in Alaska during COVID. Actually, we really couldn't leave the boat, so we had a big party sort of on board at the end of the expedition. That was fun. Offshore during the expedition, we've caught some fishing gear before. They're called FADs, so that's a FAD, fish aggregating device. So it's a big platform. So we've caught that. The tension spiked. Everybody got real nervous. We had to slow the boat down. We're working on the back deck to try to get that undone. So, but probably the best story is just when the crews come on board, or when the science team comes on board, especially if they're from different countries, they have different stories, different culture. If it's around the holidays, we get to hear about sort of all the traditions that someone has around Christmas or whatever. Or if it's Ramadan, around Ramadan, or, so you get to hear sort of those different stories, different backgrounds. To me, that's quite interesting. I like that. That's fun.
One question I had, and I have to ask this. So because I know sometimes a lot of commercial products actually work extremely well. Do you ever use any commercial technology? For example, do you ever use GoPros when you were filming underneath the water, or is everything this fancy, you can only buy it if you're affiliated with something equipment?
No, so we try to use anything available. So the seismic gear itself is off the shelf, third party from a company in France called Saracel. It's like the industry, it's the oil and gas industry standard right now, what they're using. That's what we use. So sometimes we're a version or two behind, just because we can get it a little bit cheaper. But in general, we're not that far behind what the oil and gas is using now. So the EM122 multi-beam, so up until a couple of years ago, that was the main one. They have the 124 out now, but it's still perfectly fine. With your cameras that you mentioned, we use GoPros. We have some underwater cameras as well. We just got a drone on board. I forget the name of it, but it's something that you can buy off the shelf. yeah, so we try to sort of mix and match to be able to find out the best solution for what we're trying to do. For the seismic equipment, it's usually off the shelf oil and gas world. From some of the other, so the oceanographic equipment that we have on board is from a company called Seabird. So we have the sample bottles are Niskin bottles, and then we have the Seabird equipment, which is sort of academic standard what everybody's using. Some of the other stuff is a little bit more homemade. So in the oceanographic jobs, they'll come up and they'll set our labs up that look like laboratories, the chemistry, biology, etc. So a lot of those they make themselves in their laboratories. They ship them to us. They set them up here. So it looks quite quite sophisticated. People walking around white lab coats and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I noticed how much it looks just like a regular building, the room you're in. Like, if not for the fact, like, sometimes you can tell it's moving, you wouldn't think you're on a boat. It looks just so regular. I think that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite a big room. So we've got, it's a little bit industrial back there with some storage shelves and whatnot. And over here, we've got some packages just because we're transiting. But yeah, it's it can be easy to forget that you're on a boat sometimes. And we're down lower. So like in this room here, we're below the water line, so we move a little bit less. And it's not very rough out right now. So yeah.
Well, I got one question for those who are unable to join us. But if you have any advice for younger explorers who are looking to get into the oceanographic research realm, what's some advice that you have?
Yeah, so there are so many different ways to sort of get here. There's just not one path. So even on board here, we have the maritime crew, which go to like a maritime college for like the engineers or the chief mates. You have the union, so the maritime union. So for like the deck crew, the ABs, the OSs, OS is ordinary seamen, ABs, able-bodied seamen. So that's sort of the maritime route. You have the technicians route. So you have people with sort of IT degrees, electronics degrees. You have people like me with sort of a geology degree. You have the people who work on board. So you have the cooks, you have the stewards. So you have the PSOs with a biology degree. So you have many, many different ways. Oh, and then of course the scientists and the students and postdocs. So many different ways to be able to get here. I would say if you're interested in this type of work, this is just my opinion, of course, so grain of salt, but I would go on LinkedIn or something similar. I would find someone who's sort of doing what you want to do or sort of similar to what you want to do. I would look at their background and see what they have. Now that's not the only path, but it's going to give you an idea of what they did to be able to get here. I would look at, sometimes obviously a degree helps, of course, as we all know, but sometimes micro-credentials help as well. So what does that mean? So, if you're sort of concerned about safety or you're going to go into a world where safety is a big thing, look at some micro-credentials and safety. So OSHA has a free 30-hour training. Sit down, take the OSHA course, be able to get that certificate. If it's something within the camera or filming or photograph world, see if you can do something low cost to be able to build out your foundation and maybe stack a few credentials to be able to sort of focus your interest in those areas. Yeah, that is just my opinion, but that's what I would say is something you could look to. Yeah. Let's do maybe a couple more questions, and then I need to go. Let's look at one more video. So this is a 3D image of some multi-beam or some sonar data that we took in December. So so we acquired the data, and then they stitched together to make this little 3D image. So in the center there, I'll play it again. In the center there are 3 volcanoes that we were sort of acquiring data over. So this was the first time that had actually been seen with high resolution sonar data. So if you look at Google Earth, for example, you say, now wait a minute, like I can see the ocean basins. It looks like everything's mapped. That's actually done with satellite data. It's quite amazing, actually. It's called satellite altimetry, and they're able to use small change in sea light height or in sea level height to be able to extrapolate down to an approximation of what the bottom of the ocean looks like. So it's amazing data. It's not obviously as accurate as high resolution sonar data, but it's certainly better than nothing. So yeah. Any more questions?
In 10 years' time, where do you see this field going? Kind of collection and in terms of in terms of science as a field with the information that you've gathered.
Yeah. So I had I was going to bring this up earlier and forgot. Let me just stop sharing. So in the university world, there are tons of sort of research boats. So let me share. So this is from a site called MFP, Marine Facilities Planning. So let me zoom in. So you can see all the names here. So the Atlantic Explorer, the Neil Armstrong, the Atlantis, the Savannah. So these are all research boats run by U.S. universities. The Blue Heron up in Superior. So this is us all the way over here. So there's quite a healthy sort of world out there of the different boats doing different types of scientific studies. So this will continue. Sometimes things ebb and flow a little bit. With different world events going on. Sometimes funding slows, sometimes it increases. But this type of scientific studies have been going on for a long, long time now, and it'll continue. It'll just sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but it'll continue. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope I answered some of your questions. I hope maybe the club is going to get some value out of it. I don't know. Hopefully.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Cody, for your time. I'm very happy that Evelyn was able to connect you to our club.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Do you guys want to end with any shout out for the club, or how, if someone's interested, how they would join?
If there's any way for people who are interested to contact you, would be great. Be a great start.
Yeah. So the website I have for my outreach program is called desk2deck.org. So I talk to a lot of school kids. So this trip I'll have talked to my thousandth kid. So it's I don't know how many classrooms now, but thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So desk2deck.org. But if anybody wants to join the club at Columbia, how would they do that?
Pretty simple. Just show up and we'll take it from there. We have an Instagram, a WhatsApp, and sometimes we push out emails. But if you want more quick, up to date information, WhatsApp and Instagram's your best bet. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much, and make sure you send the flag to me, and we'll get it flown. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Take care.
Let's see how